With more and more applications taking advantage of cloud-native components and cloud resources, your development environments need to adapt to that. Crafting provides a solution to manage your cloud resources running alongside your dev sandboxes. No matter whether you want shared access or per sandbox isolation, Crafting allows you to integrate with your cloud resources seamlessly. In this demo, we are going to use a simple app with containers and cloud-native components. It has a front end, a back end, a SQS message queue, and a Lambda serverless function to write data into a RDS database. How to make sure developers have a production-like environment to code and test is often a challenge. Let's assume that in an ideal setting, developers want to use dedicated and isolated SQS and Lambda functions per environment, and at the same time, they want to use a shared database. With Crafting, we can make that happen easily. Based on identity federation, the shared cloud resources, for example RDS, can be accessed easily by the services running in Crafting sandboxes. By using on-demand resource provision with Terraform, dedicated cloud resources, like SQS and Lambda, can be provisioned on demand as soon as the sandbox is created, and automatically cleaned up after the sandbox is deleted. Let's see how it is set up. The first step is to set up cloud access. We recommend to use Identity Federation, which sets Crafting as an identity provider with a well-controlled role setting for developers. That way, each developer doesn't need to do extra setup or store any individual access token, easy and secure. We use AWS as an example here. First, let's go to IAM and click into Identity Provider and click Add Provider. Then, choose OpenID Connect and set the provider URL to our product URL. Next, put your organization name as audience and then click Add Provider. After that, let's create a role with that identity provider. To do that, go to IAM, Roles, and click Create Role, and then choose Web Identity and select your newly created identity provider and audience. Next, select the permission you want to give to the role. Set the role name, and create it. With that, a role for Crafting is created in your cloud. To verify the access works, we go into the sandbox, set up a secret file with the following content containing your AWS account ID and the role name you just created. Then we make sure the config file environment variable is pointing to the mounted secret. And that's it. Now the AWS client can work seamlessly from the Crafting sandboxes. Next step is to set up your app to use Terraform to provision SQS and Lambda on demand. In an app on Crafting, we can set up a resource which calls Terraform upon sandbox creation and deletion to provision and release the cloud resources. In the app definition, we first need to make sure that the AWS access is set up. And then getting to the resource, we allow a custom Terraform file to be provided in the source tree to be executed. Here we pass in the credentials for the shared RDS instance, and pass in the name for SQS and Lambda, which are dynamically generated based on sandbox name and ID to ensure uniqueness. The actual Terraform is here, where the SQS and Lambda are defined as resources. Now when we launch the sandbox for development, the containers for the front end and back end are launched as workspaces, and the corresponding resources on cloud, like SQS and Lambda, would be provisioned on demand. We can access the URL for the cloud resources directly from the Sandbox resource page. We see from the name of this Lambda function that it corresponds to the demo sandbox we just created, and it is already properly connected with the SQS, which is also sandbox specific. Back to the resource page, we can see that the Terraform states are listed here. They are also exposed to the workspaces in Sandbox as a file mounted on the file system. This is how the processes running in the workspace, for example the backend service, is able to find the corresponding resource, for example SQS, to send requests to. Now, let's open the front end, and we can send a request to run the whole app end to end. We can see from the log that after the backend service receives the request, it enqueues to the SQS. Then the Lambda function dequeues it from SQS, fetches the title of the video based on the YouTube video URL, and stores it in RDS. The backend can also directly query the stored data by the key. We have shown that Crafting Sandbox provides developers with a self-contained complete flow by allowing your development workspaces to work seamlessly with on-demand cloud resources. With Crafting, developers can code and test their applications in a true cloud-native way.